The makeup artist stepped back to admire her work as Sarah adjusted the veil cascading down her shoulders. The ivory wedding dress hugged her frame perfectly, its delicate beadwork catching the light in the bridal suite. Outside, guests filled the garden venue in downtown Seattle, their chatter floating through the windows. "You look absolutely stunning," her best friend Monica whispered, squeezing her hand. "David is one lucky man." Sarah managed a smile, though her stomach churned with an unease she couldn't name. David Chun was everything on paper. A successful tech entrepreneur, charming, from a well-respected family. Their families had introduced them 6 months ago, and the courtship had been a whirlwind of expensive dinners and carefully orchestrated meetings. But something felt off. The way David looked at her sometimes, with an intensity that made her skin prickle. The way he'd grip her hand just a little too tightly in public. The subtle comments about how she should dress, talk, behave. "It's just wedding jitters," she told herself. "Time to go," her mother announced, her voice thick with pride. "Your groom is waiting." Sarah stood, her heart pounding. As the bridal march began and she walked down the aisle toward David, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into a cage rather than a marriage. The ceremony was beautiful. 200 guests, a string quartet, roses everywhere. David smiled at her throughout, his hand possessive on hers as they exchanged vows. The reception was lavish. Champagne flowed freely. The 5-tier cake was photographed from every angle, and the band played romantic melodies that had the older guests swaying. David kept her close all evening, his arm around her waist in a grip that left no room for escape. "I can't wait to have you all to myself," he whispered against her ear during their first dance, his breath hot on her neck. Sarah's stomach nodded, but she nodded, unsure what to say. Hours later, they arrived at David's penthouse apartment in Capitol Hill. The moment the door closed, something shifted in his demeanor. The charming smile vanished, replaced by something hungry and almost desperate. "I've been waiting for this," he said, advancing toward her. That night, Sarah barely slept. Every time she tried to rest, David would reach for her again, treating her body as though it existed solely for his pleasure. By morning, she was exhausted, confused, and aching. "Maybe it's just first-night excitement," she whispered to herself. Things would get better, but deep in her heart, she feared they wouldn't. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear what happens next. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means everything. Sarah had hoped the wedding night was an anomaly, that once they settled into married life, things would normalize. But by the end of the first week, she realized how wrong she was. David was insatiable. Morning, afternoon, evening, night, he wanted her constantly. There was no time to rest, no time to breathe. He would wake her in the middle of the night, his hands already exploring, his needs urgent and demanding. "A good wife always satisfies her husband," he'd say whenever she tried to explain she was exhausted. "You'll adjust." Sarah felt herself disappearing. Dark circles formed under her eyes. Her once bright laughter faded. She stopped eating properly, stopped caring about her appearance. She was running on empty, and David didn't seem to notice or care. When she visited her mother 2 weeks into the marriage, she thought she might find sympathy. "Mom, I'm so tired," she said quietly. "I don't think I can keep doing this." Her mother frowned. "Doing what? Being married?" "Sarah, marriage requires sacrifice. Your father was demanding in the beginning too, but I learned to manage. Just be patient." Sarah felt her hope crumble. There would be no help from her family. She tried talking to David directly. One evening, as he reached for her again, she gently pushed his hand away. "David, please. I need to rest. I'm exhausted." His expression darkened. "What do you mean, rest? You're my wife." "I know, but I'm human too. I need sleep. You need to do your duty," he interrupted, his voice cold. "I didn't marry you, so you could tell me no." Sarah felt something break inside her that night. She realized this wasn't a marriage. It was ownership. Desperate for help, she reached out to Monica. They met at a quiet coffee shop near Pike Place Market, away from prying eyes. "You look terrible," Monica said, genuine concern in her eyes. Sarah stirred her latte absently. I haven't slept properly in weeks. What do you mean? The words came pouring out. David's constant demands, his refusal to listen when she said no, the exhaustion that was consuming her. Monica's eyes widened with each revelation. Sarah, that's not okay. Have you talked to him about boundaries? I've tried. He says it's my duty as his wife. Monica leaned forward. Sarah, you need to speak to someone professional. A therapist, maybe even a lawyer. My family won't support that. My mother already told me to endure it. Then what are you going to do? Sarah didn't have an answer, but she knew she couldn't continue living like this. Something had to change. That night, she tried sleeping in the guest room, locking the door behind her. For the first time in weeks, she felt a moment of peace. Then came the pounding. Sarah, open this door right now. She froze, her heart racing. David, I just need one night of sleep. Please. The pounding grew louder. Open this door before I break it down. Trembling, she unlocked the door. David stormed in, fury in his eyes. What's wrong with you? She begged. I just need rest. He grabbed her arm. You're my wife. You don't get to lock me out. In that moment, Sarah realized she had to find a way out. This wasn't marriage, it was imprisonment, and she refused to be a prisoner. Sarah paced her bedroom, her mind racing. She'd been married for 3 months, and each day felt heavier than the last. David's obsession hadn't lessened. If anything, it had intensified. She barely recognized herself in the mirror anymore. One afternoon, while David was at his tech company downtown, Sarah confided in Rita, their housekeeper, a kind woman in her 40s who'd been with David's family for years. Rita, Sarah said quietly, her voice shaking. Do you know anyone who could help me? Anyone who could give me something to make David calmer. Rita's eyes widened. What do you mean, ma'am? I just need him to leave me alone sometimes. I can't keep living like this. Rita hesitated, clearly torn. Finally, she nodded slowly. I know someone, a herbalist in my neighborhood. But ma'am, are you sure? I'm desperate, Rita. Please. The next day, Rita returned with a small wrap package. Inside was a jar containing a dark, powdery substance that smelled of bitter roots. He said to use just a tiny bit each day. Rita explained nervously. Mix it in his tea or coffee. It should make him more relaxed. Sarah stared at the jar, hope and fear warring inside her. She didn't want to hurt David. She just wanted peace. That evening, she prepared David's usual chamomile tea, adding the smallest pinch of the powder. It dissolved quickly, leaving no trace. When she brought it to him in his home office, her hands shook slightly. Thanks, babe, he said absently, taking the cup without looking up from his laptop. Sarah watched as he drank it, her heart pounding. Nothing happened immediately, and she began to wonder if the herbs would work at all. That night, however, David fell asleep earlier than usual. For the first time in months, Sarah slept through the night undisturbed. Over the following weeks, Sarah continued adding small amounts to David's tea. The changes were subtle at first. He started coming home from work tired, spending more time resting. His constant demands decreased. He'd fall asleep on the couch watching TV, giving Sarah blessed hours of peace. Are you feeling okay? She asked one evening, genuinely concerned as he lay on the couch, looking unusually pale. Just work stress, he mumbled. I'll be fine. Sarah felt a twinge of guilt, but pushed it aside. She could finally breathe. She started reading again, taking long baths without interruption, even sketching, something she hadn't done since before the wedding. For the first time since her marriage, she didn't feel like a possession. But then David's condition began to worsen. He started complaining of headaches and chest tightness. His skin took on an unhealthy pallor. One morning, she found him bent over the bathroom sink, coughing violently. David, you need to see a doctor, she insisted. I don't need a doctor, he snapped, though his voice lacked its usual strength. Sarah stopped adding the powder immediately, terrified by what she was seeing. But David's health continued to decline. He barely ate, and when he did, he'd often vomit afterward. His breathing became labored, and he complained of pain in his chest. One evening, as Sarah was helping him to bed, he collapsed in the hallway. Help! He gasped, clutching his chest. I can't breathe. Hold on. Sarah screamed, grabbing her phone and calling 911. She knelt beside him, trying to keep him conscious. "Just breathe, David. Help is coming." But David's breathing grew weaker. His eyes rolled back, and his body went limp. "No, no, no," Sarah cried, shaking him. "David, stay with me." The paramedics arrived within minutes, but it was too late. David was gone. Sarah sat in shock as they took his body away, unable to process what had just happened. She wanted peace, not this. Never this. Within days, David's wealthy family demanded an autopsy. Sarah wasn't surprised. The Chens were powerful and suspicious, and they wouldn't let their son's sudden death go unquestioned. When the results came back showing traces of toxic compounds in his system, 2 police officers arrived at the penthouse. "Mrs. Chun," one said grimly, "you need to come with us. We have reason to believe your husband was poisoned." Sarah's world collapsed. Sarah sat in the stark interrogation room, handcuffed to the table, as Detective Morrison laid out photographs and documents before her. "We found the jar in your kitchen," he said. "The autopsy showed toxic compounds in your husband's system." "Care to explain?" "It wasn't supposed to be poison," Sarah said desperately. "It was just supposed to calm him down. I didn't know it would hurt him." "Why did you need to calm him down?" Morrison asked, raising an eyebrow. Sarah's face crumbled. "He was obsessed. I just wanted some space to breathe. I swear I didn't mean for him to die." But the detective didn't look convinced. To him and everyone else, Sarah wasn't a desperate woman trying to survive. She was a murderer who'd poisoned her wealthy husband. The trial was swift and brutal. The media dubbed her the Black Widow of Seattle. The prosecution painted her as a calculating woman who'd married for money and killed for freedom. They presented the autopsy report, the jar found in her kitchen, and testimony from a toxicologist explaining how the herbs had caused David's heart failure. Sarah's attorney, a young public defender named Jessica Kim, tried to shift the narrative. She presented evidence of David's controlling behavior, messages where he'd berated Sarah, photos of bruises on her arms, and testimony from Monica about Sarah's exhausted state. But it wasn't enough. The jury's faces remained cold and unmoved. Guilty of murder in the first degree. Sarah barely heard the verdict. As she was led from the courtroom, she saw David's family in the front row, their expressions triumphant. She'd lost everything. Months passed in a blur. Sarah sat in her prison cell, staring at the concrete walls, feeling hopeless. She'd given up on the idea of justice. Then one day, a visitor arrived, a lawyer named Grace Nguyen from the Innocence Project. "Sarah," Grace said, sitting across from her in the visiting room, "I've been reviewing your case, and something doesn't add up. I think you might have been set up." Sarah looked up, barely daring to hope. "What do you mean?" "The herbs you were given, they were far more potent than any legitimate remedy should be. And Rita's story about where she got them has inconsistencies. I think someone might have deliberately given you poison, knowing you'd use it. But who would do that? That's what I intend to find out." Over the following weeks, Grace dug into Rita's background. What she uncovered was shocking. Rita had been employed by the Chun family for years, but there were gaps in her employment record, mysterious periods where she'd disappeared without explanation. Grace tracked down Rita to a small apartment across town. When confronted, Rita initially denied everything. But under pressure, she finally broke down. "He hurt me too," Rita whispered, tears streaming down her face. "After Sarah left for her honeymoon, David, he assaulted me one night when he was drunk. He said he'd destroy my life if I told anyone." Grace's heart sank. "So, you gave Sarah the poison?" Rita nodded miserably. "I knew she was desperate. I knew she'd use it. I thought it was the only way to get justice. I didn't think about what it would do to her. Will you testify to this?" Rita hesitated, fear evident in her eyes. "The Chins will come after me. We'll protect you," Grace promised. "But we need your testimony to free Sarah." After a long pause, Rita nodded. "I'll do it. I owe Sarah that much." The courtroom was packed for the appeal hearing. Sarah sat at the defendant's table, her heart pounding as Rita took the witness stand. Rita's voice trembled as she confessed everything: David's assault, her desire for revenge, and how she'd deliberately given Sarah poison disguised as an herbal remedy, knowing Sarah would use it in desperation. I didn't want to hurt Sarah, Rita said, tears streaming down her face. But I wanted David to pay for what he did to me and to her. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Sarah felt her own tears falling as the truth finally emerged. The prosecution tried to maintain that Sarah should have known better, should have questioned the Herbs. But Grace argued passionately that Sarah had been a victim of David's abuse and Rita's manipulation. Sarah Chun was a woman driven to desperation by months of relentless abuse, Grace told the jury. She thought she was getting something to help her sleep safely at night. She had no idea she was being used as an instrument of someone else's revenge. The judge listened carefully to all the evidence, then made his ruling. Sarah's conviction was overturned. She would be released immediately. Sarah could barely process what was happening as the handcuffs were removed. After 8 months in prison, she was free. She stood outside the prison gates, feeling the Seattle drizzle on her face for the first time in months. The air smelled different, fresh, free. Beside her, Grace smiled. "You did it, Sarah. You never gave up." Sarah nodded, though her heart was still heavy. She would never forget the pain, the betrayal, the darkness. But as she looked ahead, she saw something she hadn't dared hope for: a future. The weeks following her release were challenging. Sarah had to rebuild her life from scratch. David's family had ensured she received nothing from his estate. Her own family remained distant, unable to reconcile with the scandal. But Monica was there, helping her find a small apartment and a job at an art gallery in Pioneer Square. Slowly, Sarah began to heal. She started painting again, bold, emotional canvases that expressed everything she'd been through. Her work caught the attention of a local gallery owner, and within months, she had her first solo exhibition. Standing in the gallery on opening night, surrounded by her paintings, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: peace. She'd survived the unthinkable. She'd lost everything and found herself again. The scars would always remain, but they were part of her story now, proof that she'd endured and emerged stronger. As visitors moved through the gallery, admiring her work, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. She was no longer defined by David, by the trial, or by her time in prison. She was Sarah, an artist, a survivor, a woman reclaiming her life. She had been given a second chance, and she wasn't going to waste it. Thank you for following Sarah's powerful journey. If this story touched you, please like this video, share it with others who need to hear it, and subscribe to my channel for more compelling stories of survival and redemption. Your support helps me continue creating content that matters. Leave a comment below about what this story meant to you. I read every single one. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over until you say it is.